Hi y'all, and welcome back to the garden. And let's just start where we stopped last time, in front of this garden bed. I've got a ton done over the past weekend, and I'm going to show you how it looks fully mulched, because we might storm here in like less than an hour. We might get some rain, so thought I'd come out and shoot a video before that happens. And so let's just turn the camera around and take a look at some things. So everything is nicely mulched. I do have mulch left over, so I ended up putting about 18 yards of mulch on this bed. And the tractor made that it wasn't super quick necessarily, but it did make it a whole lot easier because I could come in and dump it around the area, or just heave or pull the mulch, shovel the mulch out of the bucket. And having this area open here, which I got to put another lemon squeeze grass if I can find one this summer there. You can see it's pretty empty, but it allowed me to dump like 3 buckets full of mulch here, and I could hand move it around with a shovel to this area around all these plants. Beds that are heavily planted are really difficult to mulch, and so I wanted to focus a lot on heavily planting this year, just so I don't have to do as much mulch in the future, because eventually these heuchera will grow up and cover the ground. And so that was the goal of a lot of this planting this year. I knew there was going to be a lot of mulch. I put down probably close to 20, maybe 30 yards of mulch up here last year. The most my bulk delivery driver can deliver is 15 yards at a time. And so last year I had him deliver 15, I think it was, and then I think all he had left was about 14 at the end of the season. And then I use wood chips for this entire area here, which I've covered with mulch now. Now we do have a little bit of rain that has come through and kind of washed, because I did do lightly over this area since it was already so thick. So I can have some mulch left over. I can come through and cover up those pieces as I need to. I knew that would happen, and so I made sure I had enough left over for future use this season. Now, although I used about 18 yards, I did go pretty lightly in some areas. I had to do enough to cover the drip irrigation in a lot of the areas, but you can see after it rained, it settled a little bit. So I'll come through, like I mentioned, and do a little more covering. Of course, once these plants grow up, you're not really going to be able to see the drip irrigation anyway, but I like the aesthetic of not really being able to see it. So work on that a little bit over the coming weeks. I'm not going to do it immediately. We're supposed to get a bunch of rain over the next couple days, and so we'll see how it looks after that rain is finished. Now, while I'm right here, I want to show you something, because this is the experience I have typically had with petunias in the ground. So these look incredible, better than I've ever seen them look in the ground. And as we come down this way, they look increasingly worse, and I probably need to fertilize them, but I'm also not sure if when the mole came through, he may have eaten some of the roots on them, which caused them to look a little rough. So I may cut these back and give them a little fertilizer, because they're really scraggly looking. We'll see. I think they're putting on a little bit of new growth underneath there now, so maybe it was the mole ate some of their roots or something. Not sure, but these are looking pretty good. They probably need some fertilizer too. But where we have heavy clay soil in Ohio, I have found that annuals perform more like this than like this typically. And I also noticed in this bed, as we come this way, there's more clay down here, and as we head this way, it gets sandier and sandier. And I don't know if that's part of how the house was built with the brick or installing the sidewalk or not, but in this area particularly, it's really sandy, and it drains really quickly, and the soil is easy to dig in. So these annuals might be doing a little better because it is a little sandier, a little better soil conditions. But I'm also facing some issues in this bed, and I'm not exactly sure why. This hydrangea, it's Let's Dance Skyview, I think it has an iron issue. I initially thought it was a nitrogen issue several weeks ago, and I've given it plenty of fertilizer for nitrogen. And then I thought, well, I did some research, and I was like, well, maybe it's a magnesium deficiency. And I think I've settled on it's just chlorosis from low iron or high pH issues not allowing the plant to reach that iron in the soil, because everything else in this bed is doing okay. I mean, I just planted this annual purple fountain grass, and it is exploding. It's already got plumes on it. So this morning I came through and put down some iron tone, some soil acidifier to hopefully lower the pH of the soil a little bit, because we do have higher pH soil. And then I've ordered, and it won't be here for a couple weeks, some 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 iron supplement. That's a powder that I can mix in water and pour on it. And I'm hopeful that that will help, because right now this looks really pitiful. It's not put on any blooms this year, and it's barely grown. It's probably doubled in size actually since I started giving it some nitrogen, but you can see these leaves look awful. So we're gonna do a little work in this area and try and figure out exactly what the issue is. And if it is an iron issue or the pH is too high, maybe I can apply some amendments to this entire bed to help maybe lower the pH a little bit. That's just something we struggle with here, which everybody has their own different struggle in the garden. The roses are looking much better now that they've settled in. All the new foliage. I think the beneficial insects are finally kind of kicking in, helping control the garden. You can see some of the old foliage there was eaten up a little bit, but now that we're further in the season, all of this new foliage is essentially without issue. And this one is Rise Up 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, and I need to come through and stake it. This is intended to be, it's a short climber, and some of these limbs have gotten pretty long and they need to be staked up this beautiful trellis I have here. I showed you this container in the last video and said we had some drip irrigation issues where it didn't run for a few days and it looked really rough. But also the wind, I've noticed that we get when we have storms, kind of whips around the side of the house here. And when it does that, it blows this arrangement or this container and leaves kind of like a gap here. So I've been trying to kind of pull this back as I see issues. We just had some pretty significant rain and storm yesterday. But also, I didn't realize, I've grown it before, this 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 is really brittle. The stems are really brittle after it gets pretty big at the base. And when we had a storm last week come through, it broke off several of these stems at the base and I pulled them out because they were dying. I think the mole came through again after I mulched this weekend, because you can see the soil's kind of cracked here, but it doesn't look as bad as when it initially came through. So I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that. I'm thinking about getting some milky spore and treating the yard and these garden beds for grubs. Moles like grubs, and when I've been digging in this area, I have noticed some grub issues. So if I apply some milky spore, and you have to do it over several years, but then it kind of rids your soil of grubs or Japanese beetles for up to 10 years. So that's something I'll probably take you all along on this journey. It may not be the right time to do it right now. This may be something I have to do next year. Got to do a little more research on that and see when the best time for application is, and then I'm going to start that process. So I got all of the mulch done Saturday evening and Sunday. It didn't take quite as long as I thought it might. And then Monday I came out here because it's been a little stormy this week and edged this bed with my edging machine and then applied fresh wood chips on it. And the Limelight Prime hydrangea hedge is looking incredible. Let's take a look. So I ended up making this bed 9 foot deep, which is a little deeper than I originally expected to make it. But the edges on this bed, from when I tore out the concrete edging basically, was all over the place. It was really curvy, and in some places it came out 9 feet. So what I figured I could do is make it 9 feet all the way around. These hydrangeas will grow up and then they'll cover most of the area anyway in the future, and I didn't want to have to re-edge later. But it's possible that I could underplant them with a smaller shrub, like a deutzia is what I was thinking about, which is in the hydrangea family that would bloom in the spring. There's one called cherry blossom that I really love. And I could underplant all the way around with deutzia. And then have the hydrangeas bloom later after the deutzia is kind of gone out of bloom. I've also considered like a big catmint, so some nice purple blooms all the way around. But you can see the edge is real nice around here and is looking really good. Got the irrigation covered up, and I am really excited about how these are looking. One thing I want to show you is Limelight Prime is, since it's a newer variety, has stronger stems than Limelight. But it also starts to blush pink a little sooner. And you can see all of these blooms, a lot of them anyway, are starting to put a little bit of pink on. They're a little smaller this year, these blooms, but these will eventually get pretty large. And so being their first year, they've blown me away with the amount of growth they put on anyway. More than I expected. You can see how big, like these are, some of them are already touching in their first year. So I think the spacing choice was a really good idea. But next year, these are going to look even more beautiful. And then the third year, they will be stunning, of course, and probably as tall as the fence. While I was at it, I went ahead and edged this bed so you can see kind of what it'll look like. I need to come through and put down some contractor's paper and remulch this bed to cover up the drip irrigation. But I'm glad these spaces are finally coming together. And then lastly, 2 days ago, I came through and edged this outside bed, which is also going to be 9 foot deep. That's what I ended up with here. And so you can see, as I mentioned in a video previously, how close these are going to be to that bed and the reason I need to remove them. So this is the lilac. I was going to cut it back and I never did get to it. Still going to move this to this bed. So I need to come through and really cut this back here soon. I may forego blooms this fall, but given that it's going to be transplanted, it really doesn't need to be blooming anyway. It needs to put that energy back into root growth. And then this crabapple, which looks very pitiful. It did bloom this year, but it looks really, really bad. It's gonna have to come out. So I'm just gonna cut it to the ground, and then that will open up this whole area to get the tractor through. I can still get the tractor through over there, but these are just oddly placed. I think they may have been placed at one point for privacy to maybe this play set here, the swing, but I'm not sure exactly why they were kind of planted like they were. And it's just really odd. And I've got some trees I'm going to be getting, and I think I'm going to put a newer crabapple in this area here towards the back of the yard, so it'll still be stunning from like the back porch, and it'll grow up and be nice here in the background. When I got back from Oregon, I wanted to come through and plant some of my zinnias, but I don't know, given how the weather's doing, how well those would do and whether I'd get many more blooms for the fall. And since they were floret zinnias and they were kind of expensive, I don't want to spend the money or waste the seeds this year for fewer blooms. I'm going to let my perennials that are growing in do fine. The dahlias are coming in, which are really nice. I'm getting blooms off some of my roses over here regularly now, because I did pick continuing blooming varieties. And I'm just going to make some small bouquets from things that I already have in the cut flower garden this season. I could probably come in and plant some sunflowers or something, honestly, but I'm to the point now that I want to make sure I'm getting some projects wrapped up, that I'm maintaining what I have well this year. And next year I can start fresh. I won't have as many new garden spaces to create, and I can pay a little more attention to this cut flower space and get started on it earlier than in the season than I was allowed to this year with all the other projects going on. So I've gotten blooms on all of my heirloom roses. These look a little rough from the rain, but this is all dressed up. So I've got blooms on all of my roses but 3. 2 of them are climbers and one's called Plum Perfect, which is a purple one. So we're going to keep an eye on those, and I think I should get some blooms over the next couple weeks as they're getting settled in still before the super, super hot summer. And I'll show you those when they bloom. And just as a reason to not plant mint in the ground, so look at all these pollinators on this mint, really good pollinating plant. But this is mountain mint, which is, Latin name is 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 𝗦𝘂𝗯𝘀𝗰𝗿𝗄𝗯. And everything I read online said it was not supposed to spread as easily as regular mint, but this has literally been in this raised bed for maybe a month now. And look at all these runners it has put out. So this is why you do not plant mint in the ground. It's already rooting in, and this whole bed is going to be full of this beautiful mint. Now I've been using this in my cut flower arrangements that I've been posting on Instagram. I've only done a couple of them so far, but it is really beautiful when it comes up here in flowers. And the pollinators are just loving it right now. But I really love this blue color that it turns, and it is really nice as a foliage addition. It's getting dark out there, so I'm going to show you one last thing and then we'll wrap it up. So I need to come through and clean up my crescent garden containers. This was not a competition as to what was going to outgrow anything else, but the solar power black potato vine, if it was a competition, would be winning. It is out of control. It's crawling along the ground here, so I've got to come through and I'm gonna snip off and prune these up a little bit so they don't look so bad. It's only the end of June or very beginning of July. These have only been growing for a month and a half. So you can see how vigorous these plants are and how well they've been doing in these containers. Now that these are looking so unruly here, I'm really loving how these are growing in. These are the bigger ones, the 29-inch pinch containers that are true drop self-watering, and they're looking really good now that the purple fountain grass is coming in. I like this one. It's not spilling quite as much, but this one over here is really, really giving me all the feelings as it's trailing down the side of the container there. I'm having a little bit of bug issues eating some of the leaves on these, but nothing too substantial, so I haven't been super concerned about it. While we're here, I did come through and dig up the quick-fire fab hydrangeas I had here. One of them had been broken down because honestly I'd run over it with the tractor, which I'm surprised it survived, but it looked like it was pushing new branches. But after I extended this hydrangea bed so far, I realized that I wouldn't have much room to get around here after these things grew in. So I nixed that idea and we'll keep this grass. What I am going to do and what I'm looking at getting some help doing is putting some pavers in to extend the patio. Just 3 or 4 feet this way, maybe a set pad here to put a pergola on in the future. But when this pool patio or concrete surround was poured, there wasn't much room here. There's just enough really to walk. There's not enough room to put lounge chairs or anything. So I was originally going to extend it all the way down in here too, but I think I'm going to do 3 to 4 feet this way, so it'll cover that post that I put in the ground right there, all the way to the steps. May not do anything on this side. If I do, it might be a few feet. And then really filling in these areas here that were kind of odd choices, I think, too. So pavers here, and then I want to do pavers from this area all the way to the gate over here. So removing these pavers that are already here that were kind of done by the previous owner. They're kind of unlevel over time, and that way there'll be a bigger space for sitting here and putting some lounge chairs or something next to the pool. I don't know if that's something I'll be able to get to this year. I'm not really sure how much it'll cost. The last patio project that I did at the last home was really substantial. They installed that really big one on the back of the house, and it was pretty expensive. So it's probably not going to be in the budget this year, but I need to get some estimates to see what it would cost to do, because I think that would really kind of wrap up some of this back area here, make it look more finished and just nicer to enjoy. So if you're local and you have any recommendations of companies that could do something like that, I don't think it's a super big job, but I do want it to look nice when it's done. Thank y'all for following along on this garden walk today. I'm hoping to get a lot more accomplished over this next weekend, including getting mulch down on this outside bed of the fence here. That way I can start planting all of the stuff I have in the shrub bay that's been saved for that area over the next couple weeks. Thank y'all for joining me, and remember, be a light. Take care. Bye.